Well, let's get into this story that I want to bring up that I think reflects a lot of what we're having in this discussion about what are the core values of Democrats. Before we get into it, though, I got to do a little spiel here of saying please like, share, subscribe to the channel wherever you're watching, whether it be on YouTube, on Rumble, on X. Shout out to our KLRN people as we are getting this live tonight. We're glad you're here with us as we talk about sort of the latest cause, so the latest celebrity cause, if you want to call it, when it comes to the Democrat Party, and that is this Columbia University student, Mahmoud Khalil, who has been detained by the government. And depending upon who you talk to, this is either a free speech issue or this is a national security issue. I got a couple of clips here, pal, that I want to run through first. And it's going to start with, I think, my legal mind says let's start with the allegations first and why this person was picked up, why this Mahmoud Khalil was picked up from Columbia University, why he's being currently held somewhere in Louisiana. I want to start with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his statement about the reasoning for this detention of this gentleman, Mahmoud Khalil, who I believe is here he's here as a legal resident on a green card. Let's watch this, and I want to get your reaction, pal.
United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country as on a visitor's visa. Okay, you are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, "Hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages." If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would. If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa while you're here in those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to a green card, by the way. So when you apply for a student visa, or any visa to enter the United States, we have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down and being complicit in what are clearly crimes of vandalization, complicit in shutting down learning institutions. There are kids at these schools that can't go to class. You pay all this money to these high-priced schools that are supposed to be of great esteem, and you can't even go to class. You're afraid to go to class because these lunatics are running around with covers on their face, screaming terrifying things. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would have never let you in. And if you do it once you get in, we're going to revoke it and kick you out.
There you have it. I mean, that's the case laid out. It's not about the First Amendment for Secretary of State Rubio.
I think he nailed it, right? I haven't seen that clip until you just played it. And he said it better than I could say it. You're a guest here when you're on any type of visa, right? So part of that is not that you, first of all, you don't have full rights and benefits and privileges of American citizenship, right? You can't vote. There's a whole bunch of things you can't own a gun. There's a bunch of things you can't do here, right? You can't claim you have a Second Amendment right because you're here on a student visa. I'm not saying that we should be harsh with people on student visas and try to like quelch free speech completely, but there is a difference between, free speech. You write an opinion piece on something in a newspaper or, a paper for your school versus you're taking over buildings on a college campus and blocking other students, American citizen students, from attending class that they paid for, right? There's a clear difference there. I would hope that most people could see that.
Absolutely. And the law actually defines who these people are. If you look at the Immigration and Nationalization Act, the INA, there is a section that discusses who are these, what they call inadmissible aliens. And just like any other litigator out there, I went to the law and I went to go do my little bit of research here. And I found the statutes that I believe that they're referring to. Let's start with 8 USC 1182. I'm not going to bore you guys with a lot of the minutia of this, but these are classes of alien ineligible for visas or admission. If we scroll down a little bit of ways, and I'm going to see if I can nail it. There it is. One of the categories is terrorist activities. In general, any alien who has, and there's a list of 9 different things here, and let's think a little critically about whether or not these qualify. An alien who, 1, has engaged in a terrorist activity. Now, let's think about that for a second, Mr. Galloway. What would be a terrorist activity? Would wearing terrorist paraphernalia and passing out pro-terrorist flyers to the general public as a means of propaganda, would that be terrorist activity to you?
That's a bit of a stretch, don't you think?
That's a tough one. I don't know if I'd go that far.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, an alien who a consular officer, the attorney general, or the secretary of Homeland Security knows or has reasonable ground to believe is engaged in or is likely to engage after entry in any terrorist activity as defined in Clause 4 of this law, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think this is where lawyers make their money. If the Secretary of State, or the Attorney General, Homeland Security in this case, if they have, let's say, a file on this guy that we don't know about, maybe they've investigated him for some other activities or other connections, whether they know or have reasonable ground to believe that an alien is acting in this manner and conducting terrorist activity as defined by the law, well, that's good enough, and we'll never really know about it because that'll probably be classified, right?
You could be onto something there.
Yeah, but I think we're getting warmer now, right? It's like just swap out the word Hamas and replace it with Al Qaeda, right? Because more Americans are familiar with that group. If someone from Afghanistan came here and then was wearing, or waving the Al Qaeda flag on a college campus, and they were here on a student visa, especially after 9/11, how would we feel about that? Are they likely to potentially engage in terrorist activity at some point? I think we're getting warmer, right? And Hamas is a terrorist organization. So, yeah.
I think so. Let's get to number 3. An alien who has, under circumstances indicating an intention to cause death or serious bodily harm, incited terrorist activity. Now, if you ask a Jewish student in Colombia whether or not they felt, that someone intended to commit bodily harm against them at one of these protests in the name of Hamas, do you think that would be enough to trigger calling this person an inadmissible alien? After all, this gentleman, Mahmoud Khalil, has been one of the prime organizers of all of these protests that we've seen at Colombia over the past over a year now.
Oh, getting closer.
Yeah. And I mean, we're getting warmer and warmer here, right? There's plenty of videos out there circulating at these pro-Hamas protests that say, people break out into chants, death to America, death to Israel. That's enough for me. If you're not an American citizen and you're out there chanting either one of those things, you get the boot. That's it.
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to skip to the close here. There are other definitions here, but let's focus. I don't know if you can see it on the screen right now. Subsection 7 here of this. Endorses or espouses terrorist activity or persuades others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support a terrorist organization.
Bingo.
Ding, ding, ding. They all celebrated October 7th, and they refused to acknowledge it was a terrorist act. What else was that?
I mean, there you go. I think that gets us to him being an inadmissible alien. That should, I believe, make him deportable. Now, let's be clear. The attorneys for this gentleman, Mahmoud Khalil, all 19 of them, are signed on to a writ of habeas motion that was heard initially in the Southern District of New York. But in actuality, this is not a judicial proceeding. This is an immigration and naturalization proceeding. This is by the executive branch not by the judicial branch. They don't have to go to court to make a decision about whether or not this person should be deported or not. The decision rests with the executive branch, and they are offering due process at this point to this illegal alien. At this point, that's how he's going to be classified, this inadmissible alien under the law, and then making a determination as to whether or not he is, by definition, by statute, an inadmissible alien. They went to court to try to, I guess, bring him back to New York, where they think they'll have more favorable decision makers. But I don't think that that's going to really do anything, because I don't think that the judiciary has the power to horn in on the administrative and regulatory procedures as established by Congress in the INA for deportation. I don't think they're going to get anywhere with this.
Yeah, I wish I would have sent. I read something earlier today, and I wish I would have sent it to you. There was it was either this case or a case very similar to this, where a court did step in and not to make a ruling, but to keep the person in the United States while this plays out, so that the courts here still have jurisdiction. Because if the executive branch deports the guy, then obviously the federal courts here would have no jurisdiction over the case anymore, right? But I agree with you. It seems like it's pretty clear cut. It's a statute passed by the legislature. If the due process is, an administrative hearing with the executive branch, that seems like a no-brainer to me. And just to say one more thing about this, Gene. The mere fact of protesting, I will actually, love to debate that with people and to think it through a little more in depth and not just give a snap reaction. But I will tell you, any person that breaks any of the law that's here on a student visa, like the ones that took over a building or blocked traffic or burned stuff, like that no matter where they did that type of activity, that would be like a misdemeanor charge and subject them to deportation anyway, right? So we need to aggressively go after those people to set the example. Also charge the American citizens who are taking over buildings, right? You can't deport them, unfortunately, but they should also catch a misdemeanor and maybe be expelled from the school, right? I would never think of doing something like that at my job or at a school. It doesn't make sense.
But here's the problem. Columbia University would not press charges against anyone for that. You don't have a complaining witness unless you can, I think that the police should do this. If one of those Jewish students who have been, I don't want to say targeted, but let's say have
intimidated,
have been intimidated by these protests, or have been deprived of their right to attend class in a hall that has been quote unquote occupied, the police should be allowed to step in for that private citizen and be able to handle things here. But because the institution itself isn't allowing the NYPD to go onto school grounds, they're not going to be prosecuted. This is why this section of the INA is so important and vital to the Trump administration's decision-making process, because they don't need a crime in order to start the deportation proceedings if there is this national security risk as outlined in the statute. If someone is an inadmissible alien under another section of the INA, you can deport them. So long as you have that classification done, that's all there is to it. I do want to bring up this clip of my favorite senator, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, talking about the legal framing of the Trump administration's actions here. And because he is a lawyer, he does speak artfully about this. And I want to give credit where it's due. I listened to this clip beforehand and helped formulate my opinion.
Right. The ACLU is defending Mr. Khalil. They say this is a freedom of speech case. I support freedom of speech. How else would we know who the idiots are without freedom of speech? This case is not about freedom of speech. It's about civilized behavior. It's about national security. It's about terrorism. Mr. Khalil is not an American citizen. He's here with a green card. By word and deed, at Columbia, he's shown that he supports Hamas. That's a violation of the Immigration and Naturalization Act, which says you can be deported if you support a terrorist organization. Here's the bottom line. Mr. Khalil hates America, as you said in your monologue. You know, if you're not happy where you are, move. You're not a tree. Secretary Rubio is going to help him move. We may lose in district court, depending on the judge that we get, but we'll win this in the Supreme Court.
And that's what it comes down to. The forum shopping here is the big concern, because I can see a liberal judge in the People's Republic of New York City granting that bogus habeas motion and start gumming up the works. But then it'll just go up the ladder, and eventually the Supreme Court will get this matter, and the Supreme Court, in my opinion, will say that the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction over immigration and naturalization, which has been imbued in the executive branch by statute. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. And I mean, this administration really came to play, because not only are they taking the, the immigration angle and the legal angle, they are also cutting federal funding to schools that are doing what you said. If they refuse to protect students, in this case, it's Jewish students, but tomorrow it could be Catholic students or anyone else, Black students, right? If you refuse to protect those students' civil rights and their ability to get an education that they're paying for, because you don't want to press charges with the local police when they take over a building, then you lose your federal funding. And we'll see you in court for that one too, I guess.
Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. There's another clip that's out there. This was put out by Scott Jennings from CNN, the guy that you always ask, why the hell are you on this network?
I don't know why he still does it.
And I think this shows why he is there, because I think he likes being in the trenches with Democrats and trying to expose who they are. I don't want you to necessarily listen to Scott Jennings and what he says, although he makes sense, just like the other Republicans we heard from just now. But listen to the thinking of everyone trying to counter Scott Jennings' arguments here and what they're saying.
An alien, he can be deported under U.S. law for if the Secretary of State has any reasonable ground to believe he would have a potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequence. And you mentioned the student organization. The student organization put out. Let me finish.
But before you move on, because I think that's a really important point, right? That's the statute that they're using.
Yeah.
Have you seen any evidence to suggest that there is actually a serious reason to believe that this student is going to be a threat to national security?
I mean, I've certainly watched the abomination that's gone on at Columbia and Barnard and other places, and I will just tell you,
threat to national security.
And I'll just tell you that
I'm not going to let you move on, because this is the
I'll tell you why it's a threat to national security if you let me answer you.
Well, Scott,
do you want me to answer you or not?
Okay.
His organization says we are dedicated fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization.
Okay.
He's not a citizen. He doesn't need to be here.
I don't want to. You just described him.
So they're minimizing, to start out with, the threat to national security that this illegal alien, green card holder, whatever his status may be, this gentleman espousing and endorsing terrorist activity. They're minimizing the national security effects of influencing students to support terrorism.
Yeah. And how old is this woman? Does she not remember that the many, if not all, of the 9/11 hijackers were here on student visas, right? They were learning how to fly planes and doing other things in this country.
Flashback. All 19 of the hijackers were in the U.S. on legal visas, issued in their true names with no real background checks.
End of flashback.
And I wish we would have had a more aggressive administration back then to look into their backgrounds if they're coming from certain places and root them out and kick them out of here.
You know, that's a really good point that really hasn't been discussed anywhere in the media. Say it one more time.
I'm the media now.
You are the media. Look at me. I am the media now. Say it one more time for the people in the back. The people who perpetrated September 11, many of them were here on student visas. There it is.
Al-Qaeda supporters, right?
Or outright members.
I don't know if Al-Qaeda or Hamas have like membership cards where you sign an application to join, or if you just
they got the secret decoder ring.
right?
That's the only way you can know.
Like, I don't think there's card-carrying members. Like, I think if you just say you're in Hamas, you're in Hamas pretty much. Like, that's it, right? The guy's pledging allegiance to Hamas, this terrorist organization. See ya.
Well, unless they're the people out there who are, LGBTQ espousing that they're supporting Hamas, I don't know if Hamas would claim them. Just saying.
A lot of them are running around saying that too, though. Those morons.
Indeed. I'm going to continue on with the clip because there are more arguments to come at Scott Jennings here we can address.
Having viewpoints that you disagree with. Again, is that enough to have someone lose their rights in this country?
He has viewpoints that, in my opinion, jeopardize the security of the United States.
But how?
He is obviously a radical who is here to foment.
No, he's not a radical at all. He's
violence against the United States government.
He wants to destroy Western civilization.
Against the United States government,
You're saying eradicate Western civilization doesn't make you a radical?
Has he acted in any way that is
I think
violence against the United States government?
Yes, he has espoused and endorsed the activities of known terrorists. Isn't that enough?
But Gene, don't you love this? CNN is being forced, because they're idiots, to defend radical Islamic extremism. Like that's their position in life now.
It's the 80-20 you were just talking about a few minutes ago.
Yes. There's not many people who will be defending Mahmoud Khalil Yabba Like, I don't think there's that many people that would defend this guy and want to keep him here.
Oh, we're getting canceled, but I don't care anymore. So let's keep going.
I think these protests and the violence they have fomented and the intimidation and fear against the Jewish kids on these campuses is absolutely an act of insurrection against the United States.
I don't think the American speech, Scott. That's enough.
Look, yes. Look, what they have engaged in is a clear threat to the United States. And if you want the United States to be overrun by radicals the way Europe has, be my guest. But I think the president needs to stand up for the integrity of the United States.
What is the threat?
The threat of our country being, and our college campuses being overrun by radicals who are trying to run Jewish kids off of campuses and anybody else who disagree. Yes, they are. In UCLA.
No,
in UCLA.
First of all,
they wouldn't even let them go to class.
First of all, they were
Columbia's an abomination.
First of all, there were violent counter protests at UCLA that were done by Jewish organizations.
No, both sides. Anti-Semitism is a scourge on this country. Do not.
We're both sizing now, Galloway. Well, those Jewish students are countering the violence coming towards them. They're not just letting it happen to them. Are you freaking kidding me here?
Like, the premise of her argument is absurd. She keeps throwing out free speech. You don't have full rights and privileges if you are not a citizen in this country. You are a guest on a student visa. You don't get the Second Amendment, right? So your First Amendment rights are somewhat curtailed. An American citizen can run around with a Hamas flag outside and nothing's going to happen to them. They don't have to meet the same requirements as a student visa holder. So the whole argument is flawed. Now, I will say, a black guy with a cowboy hat, I do want to hear what he has to say normally. But I think he's wrong from what I've heard so far.
So far, I'm not with him as well. By the way, guys, if you're liking what you're hearing in this video, please subscribe to the channel, whether you're watching, whether it be on YouTube, on Rumble, follow us on X. Let them know at KLRN Radio on X that you like us there as well. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, spread the word. We'll be doing some more grifting later on, but back to the video now.
Absolutely is that it is not clear that this particular student has engaged in the specific actions that he was talking about. And you've shown me no evidence of that either.
Okay, well, guess what? He is not a citizen. If he were a citizen, I might feel differently. He's a guest in this country.
Okay.
It's my view,
so in other
and
words,
it's the Trump administration.
But it doesn't matter.
No,
See, here's the thing, Abby Phillip from CNN. Scott Jennings may be your straw man here, but you are ignoring the actual law. You don't need to have public proof of anything. If the government knows or has reason to believe that this person is engaging in certain terrorist activities, you're out. That's all you do. She's trying to treat this like a judicial standard when it's not that at all. Ross, you know that I help sponsor a friend of ours who is not from America to come here to live here as a permanent resident and raise a family, start his business and whatnot here. One of the conditions of that is when I sponsor that person, that if this person gets in trouble, it could come back around to me for being the sponsor of that person. If there is any damage done or if there's anything punitive in nature, it could come back around to me. Abby Phillip is trying to equate illegal alien or resident with a green card or student status or whatever it may be to being a full-fledged American citizen, and it just doesn't work that way.
Of course, and the proof is there. I don't know why he stumbled on this. What proof do you need? This is a person that is a guest here that is expressing support and organizing others to support an organization deemed to be a terrorist organization by our country. That's all. That's the proof, right? I don't need to prove that the guy's building a bomb in his backyard, right? I don't need that proof. He's just expressing support for a terrorist organization, and he's here as a guest. It's time to go. That would be this. I would feel the same way if it was Al Qaeda. I would feel the same way if it was a Nazi, right? You're here as a guest, and you're supporting a terrorist organization and convincing others to do the same. You got to go.
If you like that clip from our new show, Behind Enemy Lines, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any other shows, and tune in live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.